Ben Domenech, editor-in-chief of the Spectator and Fox News contributor, joins me as he does every Friday to review. There are really two stories, Ben. There should only be one story, the war that Israel is about to wage in response to the massacre it suffered Saturday. But we also have a dysfunctional House Republican caucus. So I want to get your takes on both of those before I go to some specifics. Your reaction after a week of just sort of absorbing the heinousness of the depravity in Israel committed by Hamas?
Well, I think my initial reaction, and I've moved through different stages here, and I've had to make sure that I turn my phone off when I go to bed, because I think doom scrolling on this is just inevitable. If you start looking at the images and stuff like that, you're going to set yourself up for nightmares, and it's not a good thing. Look, my overall reaction is that I think that we have been incredibly naive in the West, not just America, but the West as a whole, about the degree to which the threats are around the corner for the Western world. Really, that we are being hemmed in so many different ways. What we see happening, obviously, in eastern Ukraine is one thing that has dominated the headlines, but we're not paying attention to all the other ways that we're being. I mean, the phrase, that darling little phrase, the coup belt, that is now applicable to Africa, for instance. The fact that we have a China that is sending all the different saber-rattling messages that they are, and the fact, frankly, that we have not been, I think, clear-eyed about the threats in the Middle East that were very real even during this process. And look, we are very shortly removed from having a lot of optimistic, happy talk about the potential for a deal between Saudi Arabia and Israel that would be historic and would be positive. But the fact that there was going to be a negative pushback against that, something that could be, I think, pretty predictable if you step back and look at it, and that so many intelligence services apparently did not have that as something that they could conceive of. I think we're going to look back at this and ultimately learn that there were a lot of warning signs, there were a lot of clear signs of what could happen, but a lot of people were, frankly, living in a fantasy land about the potential of it really happening. Now, obviously, that's been breached, and I think that we need to be backing Israel to the hilt. And what's going to happen next, and you know this, Hugh, is that throw this out a week from now, 2 weeks from now, and there's going to be major pushback in American media. People who are currently, probably posting support Israel or pray for peace things online are going to be saying, well, they've gone too far, and we can't have them, sort of get things out of control and that kind of thing. No, you have got to raise Hamas to the ground, and that, to me, I think is something that we need to be prepared for, because it's just the clear-eyed truth about the matter.
Ben, I wrote a column for the Post this morning because I've been struggling with this all week long. I sort of thought Nazis existed in pockets of one or two. I did not expect 1,000, what they call the special SS units that went just to kill Jews. It was like we were back in 1944 and 45. And there are thousands of Jew killers. I'm just sort of still stunned by my naivete that there were so many people who would kill that.
Well, but
there was no objective.
I don't think you're alone in that. I don't think that you can feel, you shouldn't self-indict to the degree that I think so many Americans, and this is something that, myself and my wife and our friends have been, sort of talking about in recent years, is just that, we felt like these risks were getting higher and higher, and that, like, a lot of us in the Western world were more focused on this in the kind of context of, these are just campus crazies. Or these are just extremists and they'll be kept down. Well, but when the old people are sort of starting to exit the political scene, when Nancy Pelosi exits the scene, who is there to keep the squad down? Who is there to actually keep things under control? And the answer is there isn't anyone. And I think that's, obviously that's the Western frame of this, but I think that's true generally of the world, that we have this experience now where there are a lot of people who are a lot more extreme than they let on and are willing to cross that line into actual bloody activity without, I think, any compunction.
Yeah, I've always just thought the death to America, death to Israel chant is a malign version of cheering on the Ayatollah. It's not. Yeah. It's a resurrection of Nazi propaganda.
It is.
Let me ask you, Ben, about the House GOP. I just talked to Mike Garcia. He's one of the serious members of Congress. I've been talking to all the veterans. Ryan Zinke's coming up, Dan Crenshaw, Michael Waltz, Mike Gallagher, Derek Van Orden. They've been lecturing the caucus that our fleet is going within range of the Hezbollah missiles, and we don't have a speaker. We don't have one of the gang of eight is not there. The intel briefing gang that advises the president and the SecDef on what to do. It's impossible for me to grasp how absurd this handful of Republicans are.
Well, they're absurd, they're unserious, and I think that this past week and everything that happened within it just revealed how much this was, and I know we talked about this last week. This was entirely motivated by personal animus. There was no principle involved. There was no ideology involved. There was no consistent status involved. And I know there's some people in the fringes of conservative media who've tried to turn them into the kind of crusaders that we've seen in the past. People who whether you supported them or not, actually stood on principle in terms of the fights that they were having internally. That doesn't apply to these people at all and on any level. And the simple fact is that, now that, Steve Scalise has dropped out, we are going to go through, something today that I think is going to be difficult in terms of Jim Jordan trying to, gather together enough people to actually get a confirmable vote as Speaker. And I think that the number one thing that we need to be doing right now, frankly, is reexamining the position of the Speaker pro tem. Because, look, we've only had two of them in history. One was Thomas Jefferson. The next was Patrick McHenry. Okay, and so the fact is that there just aren't rules for this. We didn't have the kind of challenges and the kind of intel briefings and the like the last time we had Speaker pro tem. And so I think, frankly, this time around, we have to look at the idea that defining those rules and allowing him to do a lot of the things that a speaker needs to be able to do functionally is something that we need to be looking at, and we certainly need to solve this problem going forward. Imagine if he was, in this position for, multiple months or something along those lines. He needs to be able to take those briefings, do those briefings, know what's going on, and function essentially as a speaker, in the temporary sense. Without having the kind of restrictions that I think are currently placed on the role.
Yeah, they could do a 60-day or a 90-day agreement where he'll be the speaker and then will resign while the Republicans sort out their problems.
And Patrick McHenry, he's been trying to get out of this for a long time. They pulled him back in, man. He's been around in Washington. He came in as the the youngest member at the time that he got elected at 29, and he's been looking forward, I think, to a lucrative career in finance once he gets out. And this is kind of a weird situation for him. But look, the people who are there they cannot get to that. And this is a sign, frankly, of why McCarthy was the right guy for the job in the first place, because he could actually get to that level of numbers and bring people together. But he got assassinated by a group of people who just are children in terms of their actual priorities.
Ben Domenech, follow him on Twitter, or the site formerly known as Twitter, now known as X, at B Domenech, and watch for him on Fox News. Thank you, Ben.